Why don't you just leave this house and become homeless, you old menopausal hag? After 30 years of marriage, my husband snapped, suddenly getting all bold and confronting me with divorce. Old menopausal hag? What a filthy thing to say! Fine, let's get divorced then. Go off to your mistress if that's what you want. But just so you know, I will never become homeless. I'll find true happiness no matter what it takes. Dear God, please punch this arrogant, delusional man in the face. I'm Melissa, a stay-at-home wife in my 50s. I married Kevin when I was 22, having met him through a friend while I was working in an office job. He was older and more experienced in the working world, and his gift for gab caught my attention, eventually leading us to date. When he proposed, saying, "Marry me," I immediately said yes. In our early days, he helped around the house and we spent weekends together, enjoying each other's company. But about a decade in, things started to get stale. We thought about having kids but realized it wasn't something that would just happen. By our late 30s, we even tried fertility treatments, but when those didn't work and Kevin began to pull away, we both silently decided to stop. He probably felt liberated. I was vocal about wanting his support for getting pregnant, marking the calendar for when it was likely. When I considered going back to work since we couldn't have kids, Kevin scoffed. What? You're saying I don't earn enough? Just stay home and take care of the house. So I was stuck at home, our relationship cooling further. I tried suggesting outings to lighten the mood, but he'd brush me off, saying he had plans. His nights out became more frequent, and his attitude towards me grew colder, only talking about his work outings. Eventually, I accepted this as the norm. In my late 40s, my health started to decline, causing headaches and fatigue that interfere with household chores, something Kevin barely noticed due to his scarce presence at home. When he was home, my inability to keep up with chores due to my health would irritate him. Hey, can't you even keep the laundry in check? I was just lying down. What do you think you're doing lounging around while I'm out working? This was becoming unbearable. I defended myself. It's not like that. I'm really not feeling well. But he wouldn't believe me. To him, I had become a lazy wife. Meanwhile, Kevin started to pay more attention to his appearance, picking out ties with care, something he never did before. I noticed new ties and his outings in casual suits. Why all the dressing up? I asked, to which he replied, meeting up with work buddies. Doubts crept in, but my poor health kept me from probing further. One day, I asked him, "Could you bring home meds for the headache, please?" Only to be met with a harsh, "What? Can't you manage your own health? It's because you're always lazying around. Just sleep it off." Eventually, I saw a doctor and found out I was experiencing symptoms of menopause. The doctor said my headaches and dizziness were due to autonomic nervous disturbances, but fortunately, they were mild and manageable with supplements. I decided not to tell Kevin, doubting he'd understand. As I learned to manage my symptoms, I paid closer attention to his erratic behavior. One late night, I greeted him. "Welcome home," surprising him since I was usually in bed. "Oh, you're still up." "Couldn't sleep." "Were you out with colleagues again?" I asked. "Yeah, but what's it to you?" He snapped back, but I detected the scent of women's perfume on him. "Are you wearing perfume?" I inquired. "No, must have been someone on the train. I'm going to bed, it's late." However, the perfume smell reoccurred, and another time, I found a receipt from a fancy restaurant we never visited together. My investigation into his credit card statements revealed purchases from women's fashion and jewelry stores, none of which were for me, of course. I could only think of one reason for his actions. Confronting him with the restaurant receipt, I asked, Who did you go with? It's from last weekend. Kevin dismissed it. Checking receipts now? Jeez, it was just a junior from work. Wanted to treat them to something nice. On a weekend? To a restaurant you'd never take me to? I pressed. Hanging out with you is boring. I want to enjoy my days off. He retorted, leaving me shocked. We have been through so much, even fertility treatments. Lately, you've been using your card for women's items. I started. So what? It's my money. I can buy whatever I want. He cut me off. But it's not for you, is it? I pushed. Just gifts for a colleague. A reward for their hard work, he claimed. And what kind of relationship do you have with this colleague? I questioned. None of your business, he snapped. You prefer spending your days off with them, shopping and dining, over me? I continued. You want to be alone on days off, don't you? You're always too sick to go anywhere anyway. He accused. Well, there's a reason for that, I explained. What reason? He scoffed. It's just menopause symptoms. I've been taking supplements and it's getting a bit better. I clarified. Menopause, huh? Shows your age. He sneered, laughing mockingly. It's true, you just don't seem like a woman anymore. Excuse me? Being treated like an old woman just because I'm experiencing menopausal symptoms? You're always wearing the same old lady clothes. It's so predictable. Kevin taunted. There's no need to speak to me like that, I protested. I've given everything for you. Let you live comfortably as a housewife, and even supported us through fertility treatments. But in the end, it was all pointless. And now you're talking about menopause? Looks like your life's pretty much over. He concluded harshly. It's not like I wanted this to happen to me. And don't change the subject on me. We're talking about you. You're having an affair, aren't you? I confronted him. An affair? Yeah, with a much younger colleague. Kevin admitted nonchalantly, revealing his infidelity without hesitation. It's more serious than just an affair. Being with you is just exhausting, especially now with your menopause. Alright, let's get divorced then. You'll struggle to make ends meet immediately, so I'll give you alimony or whatever you want. He declared dismissively. What? I was stunned. After being a housewife for 30 years, there's no way you'll find work now. And with menopause too. You've lost any charm you might have had as a woman. Impossible to think about remarriage. The alimony I give you will probably just go straight to your living expenses. Might as well become homeless, you old menopausal hag. Kevin laughed mockingly. I was shocked. Even though our marriage had grown cold, to treat me like an old person then tell me to become homeless? Doesn't that show a complete lack of compassion towards someone you've lived with all this time? I had expected an apology from him upon confronting him about the affair. I had even been willing to forgive if it was just a momentary lapse. Ignoring my shock, Kevin started packing his bag. I can't stand being with you anymore. I'm going to her place. I'll send the divorce papers. Make sure you sign them, he said before leaving. Stunned, I couldn't respond, and hours passed in a daze. What had I really meant to him? Crying, I called my parents, and my mother consoled me. I decided to pack my things and stay with my parents for a while. A few days later, having cried my heart out, my mind felt clearer. There was no time to waste thinking about him anymore. I had to find a job and live on my own. I was determined not to end up homeless. Fortunately, my parents were healthy and my menopausal symptoms were subsiding. Despite a career gap, being single meant I could work without domestic constraints. I got a divorce from Kevin, taking the standard alimony through an impersonal process facilitated by lawyers. Then, a few months later, while job hunting, an old friend who ran a matchmaking service approached me. We ran into each other at a cafe, catching up and sharing my job search struggles. He needed help due to staffing shortages at his office. Initially hesitant, I learned he was also divorced and found this experience invaluable in his current role. Encouraged by his words, I started working at the matchmaking office. Years later, at a matchmaking event organized by the office, an incredible incident occurred. Amidst the chit-chat among participants, a commotion broke out when one man got aggressive with another over a discussion about male menopause. "Do you understand the pain of losing male functions? You'll be in the same boat one day," the man exclaimed before storming off, and that man was none other than my ex-husband, Kevin. "Why are you here?" we both exclaimed in unison, sending chills down my spine. Kevin initially seemed surprised, but then condescendingly laughed, thinking I was a participant. "Looking for a new host to leech off?" "What? You've got it all wrong. I'm part of the organizing team here, helping people find new partners," I clarified. "Plain dumb, huh?" Kevin responded, his anger escalating. "Everyone, this lady right here is my ex-wife. Don't expect much from an event organized by a divorcee. She's more of a curse than a matchmaker." Kevin jeered, earning scornful looks from other participants. Seeing this as an opportunity for revenge, I calmly stated, "Yes, I'm divorced, but I'm happy now." "Bluffing, are you? You must be alone." "Don't lie just because you're scared of losing customers," Kevin retorted. "Actually, it's true. I've remarried," I revealed, showing off my sparkling wedding ring. Kevin, unable to believe it, only grew louder. "Everyone, she's lying!" But the commotion attracted the company's president. "What's all this about?" "Sorry, my ex-husband, a participant, is loudly berating me," I explained. "I see. Rest assured, everyone, she's indeed our staff. Please continue to enjoy the party," the president assured, standing by me and facing Kevin. "Even the president is lying? That's why I don't trust matchmaking services," Kevin accused. However, the president, smiling calmly, extended his hand to me. "Actually, I'm her husband," he revealed, showing a matching wedding ring. "Huh?" Kevin was dumbfounded. "She helped me start this matchmaking service, and that's how we got married. Please enjoy the event organized by us. By the way, I'm also a divorcee," the president announced proudly, turning to me. "We used our experiences to run this company. We hope today's event will be meaningful for all of you," he said, taking my hand in a gesture of unity. The venue erupted into thunderous applause, and the female participants looked up to the president with respect. Then he turned to my ex-husband and asked, "Didn't you come here seeking a happy marriage as well?" My ex-husband, clearly outmatched, stumbled over his words, unable to form a coherent response. I felt a sense of triumph. But I didn't stop my onslaught there. "By the way, didn't you marry the woman you had an affair with?" No. I broke it off with her. Being young isn't enough, you know," he replied, his excuse sounding desperate. Then, the man from the earlier commotion pointed at him and loudly said, "Hey, but you just told me you were dumped by the woman because of your male menopause symptoms." Aha! I felt a sense of realization. Kevin's face turned beet red. Pretending to offer consolation, I addressed the gathered crowd. "Well, it's something that happens to everyone as they age. We shouldn't mock menopause. The charm of a person is built over a lifetime. As applause filled the room, my ex-husband, finding the situation unbearable, made a hasty exit. From a distance, my current husband, the president, gave me a triumphant thumbs up. The matchmaking event that day was a huge success, leading to several new couples forming. Rumor has it that my ex-husband's symptom of male menopause worsened to the point where he couldn't continue working, which I found deservedly fitting. Life is unpredictable. According to other rumors, my ex-husband's condition deteriorated further, causing trouble at similar matchmaking events and landing him on a blacklist. At his company, he harassed many female colleagues by calling them useless, which eventually led to his dismissal. Ironically, the one who turned out to be useless was him. Since then, I have continued to work diligently at the matchmaking office and as the president's wife. Though our company is small and we may not be wealthy, my peaceful life with the person I love is priceless. Above all, I'm devoted to my current job of bringing compatible people together.
Constantly mocked by my husband and MIL as just a housewife, I declared I'd quit being their wife and DIL, leaving them stunned.
What could possibly keep a stay-at-home wife so busy? My husband scoffed as he looked down on me, a full-time housewife. Matching his tune, my mother-in-law, Helen, chuckled. You're just a parasite, mocking me. It wasn't just her who suddenly started freeloading at our place. I was also thrust into taking care of my grandmother-in-law with dementia without so much as a thank you. Instead, everything I did was met with complaints, even though I was working hard at raising our daughter. And they call me a parasite? Bring it on. I'll show them their place. My name is Sherry. Every Valentine's, I treat myself to some chocolate, but this year, overindulging led to some serious skin breakouts at the age of 40. It's getting harder to recover from breakouts every year, you know? Or should I take acne as a sign of youth? Not really, I guess. Back in my 30s when my skin was still somewhat supple, Dwight came home from work one day with his mother and grandmother in tow and announced, "We've decided to all live here together from now on." The shock on my face was indescribable. What do you mean? I haven't heard anything about this, I snapped at my husband. Dwight replied, Mom broke her hand, you see? Glancing at his mother's right hand. She lifted her bandaged hand and laughed carelessly. Silly me. You know Mom has been taking care of Grandma with dementia, right? He added. Yeah, I know, but... I began to feel a sense of dread as I glanced at Helen, who confidently stated, With this hand, I can't possibly take care of her. Well, unlike you, I can handle just about anything smoothly. But given my age and this injury, I can't be expected to do the caregiving, you know what I mean? She said with a smirk. Sighing, I thought about how subtly she implied I was incompetent. I absolutely detest this about her. Helen used to claim she was a career woman who led various successful projects in a major corporation. But in reality, her job was mainly making copies, a placeholder until she got married. She would leave work at 5 p.m. claiming her efficiency was the reason, when it was actually because there were no copies to make by then. Meanwhile, I'm a vocational school graduate and former beautician, mocked by Helen for choosing a path only an idiot would take. And when I quit my job to prioritize my baby, she lectured me. I managed to balance work and parenting. If my job was just making copies and leaving at 5 p.m., I could balance work and parenting too. As much as it irritated me, I just smiled and said, Is that so? I've been avoiding visits to Dwight's family home, citing that unfamiliar environments and places could make our daughter sick. Dwight understood, and she didn't insist, happy with just him visiting. We maintained a comfortable distance from her until the topic of living together came up. I was overwhelmed. Surely, with her dominant hand injured, Helen couldn't care for her mother with dementia. It made sense that they needed our support. I get it, really. But why didn't he consult me before bringing them home, knowing how I felt about Helen? I felt betrayed. Dwight then reasoned. Since you're a full-time housewife, you can take care of Grandma, right? Yes, I was a full-time housewife, but I was raising our 2-year-old daughter practically by myself. Despite that, I couldn't say no when his mother and grandmother showed up with their bags, expecting to move in. I reluctantly agreed to take on the caregiving role, thinking it would be temporary until Helen's injury healed. However, even after her recovery, Helen showed no signs of leaving and kept leaving all the caregiving responsibilities to me. She's her mother, not mine, for God's sake. If your hand is okay, please help with the caregiving, I requested gently. I have work. She refused. Her job was just a part-time gig at a supermarket, working twice a week from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., hardly an excuse to avoid caregiving responsibilities. And she can't use her work as an excuse because she had chosen the schedule herself to make sure she had enough time to care for her mother. She also claimed her boss valued her as an essential part of the company, a laughable statement for someone with her part-time schedule. It was clear she was just boasting. Yet, she frequently reminded me, unlike you, who quit your job as soon as you got pregnant, I'm indispensable at work. I wish I could retire, but they just can't let me go because of my excellence, she'd say with a grin. I so wanted to retort sarcastically about her being a highly skilled shelf stalker with a college degree, but I held my tongue. For all her talk of being a career woman, her incompetence was obvious in our daily life. She often misheard phone calls, couldn't operate the DVD player, and struggled with the TV remote, likely clueless about computers and even unaware of what YouTube is. She hardly did anything around the house, leaving clothes out and not cleaning up after herself. Utterly inconsiderate. Listening to her, you'd never guess she was the capable person she claimed to be. Considering she attended the only private women's college in her rural hometown, I suspect she was admitted because the school was desperate for students. So there I was, increasingly burdened by my growing resentment towards Helen. Dwight, for his part, seemed indifferent to her extended stay and my discomfort, brushing off my concerns with, "It's fine, we can all live together." Worse, he began to criticize me for not being welcoming enough to his mother, turning colder as if I was the problem. I used to love him for his kindness, but living with his mother and grandmother, he became pampered and indulgent. They encouraged his daily heavy drinking under the guise of freedom, a far cry from the 2 drinks a day we had agreed on. Helen's coddling shifted his affections towards her, painting me as the nagging wife who couldn't sympathize with his feelings. She convinced Dwight that it was natural for a wife to care for her husband and his mother, turning him lazy to the point where he wouldn't even prepare his clothes after the shower, demanding I do it instead. Just like Helen, he left messes everywhere, refusing to clean up by insisting, "Cleaning is your job, isn't it?" His increased drinking led to a shorter temper, making any conversation with him fraught and negatively impacting our daughter's upbringing, which I tried to mitigate by avoiding conflicts, leaving most of my grievances unvoiced. This only emboldened him further, cementing his role as an unbearable traditional husband. All this stress was Helen's doing. As for the grandmother, her dementia had progressed since we last saw her, becoming more aggressive and prone to outbursts. There were times she hit me hard on the head with her fist. Yet Dwight and Helen would just laugh it off, saying, "It's your fault for upsetting her. You're just bad at handling things," nearly bringing me to tears with frustration. Even though I'm stretched thin with childcare and caregiving, Helen has the nerve to ask, "I want to watch Korean dramas, so rent some DVDs for me." As if I have the time to go out and rent her stupid DVDs when even getting enough sleep has become a luxury. But if I were to express how unreasonable her requests are, she'd get mad and tattle to Dwight saying, "Your wife is being mean to me." And then I get lectured by my husband, with nobody willing to listen or understand my side of things. How did things get to this point? I've been feeling increasingly down. I've hit my limit, physically and emotionally. One day, after being hit by Grandma, Dwight scolded me. "Why do you always upset Grandma? You really don't know how to handle things." All I did was wipe her mouth after she spilled her food. She snapped, saying, "Don't touch me," at first. So when I stopped, she then complained, "Wipe my mouth, it's disgusting," and hit me. I don't think my lack of skill is the issue here. Dwight, if you're gonna complain so much, why don't you take over the caregiving? It's not like you're doing anything else. She's your grandmother after all. I shouldn't even be responsible for her care in the first place. I argued. Are you stupid? There's no way I could take on the caregiving. I'm busy as hell, he retorted. I'm busy too, I exclaimed through tears, only to be met with his derisive snort. Busy? What could possibly keep a stay-at-home wife so busy? Before I could respond, Helen interjected with a laugh. You're just a parasite. A parasite? Me? I manage childcare, household chores, and caregiving, keeping them comfortably housed, and I'm the parasite? That's unforgivable. Fine, I quit being a wife and a daughter-in-law as of today, I declared. Dwight and Helen looked baffled by my statement. You're quitting being a wife? Planning to divorce? As if you could. He scoffed. Without batting an eye, I calmly stated, I'm leaving you. What the? Ignoring his bewildered expression, I opened a cabinet behind me and slammed some documents down on the desk. Here's the divorce papers. Sign them, please. Are you serious? He stared at the divorce papers and then at me, his face turning pale. Helen tried to maintain her composure, her voice quivering. She can't be serious. What's wrong, Helen? Scared of losing your precious caregiver? I taunted. No, it's not that. You can't possibly think of a divorce as feasible. How do you plan to survive without any money? Helen challenged. I can't believe you would say that, I shot back. Dwight, sensing the gravity of the situation, warned Helen. Stop, Mom. Don't say anything anymore to her. Helen, did you know this house is mine? I revealed. What? Helen was stunned while Dwight held his head in his hands. Yes, actually, I inherited this land and house from my late grandfather, and my husband and I renovated it to live there. I thought you said my son bought this house. Yes, we told you that at Dwight's request. What do you mean? You're the type who thinks a man is worthless if he lives in a house registered in his wife's name, right? Oh, well, yes, of course. A man should be the breadwinner and provide a home or two. That's why Dwight never told you the truth, I explained. Huh? When we found out we were expecting, we decided to leave our apartment life behind and move into a house. That same year, my grandfather passed away, leaving me his land and house. We agreed it was the perfect solution, but Dwight hesitated, saying, My mom's going to judge me if we lived in a house that's under your name. You see, Helen holds outdated views on gender roles, believing men should financially support women. So when she hears modern couples splitting bills on dates, she's quick to criticize. That's not very manly. Meanwhile, she also claims to hold progressive views, arguing that women should be independent and not rely on men. The contradiction was clear, If Dwight hadn't bought our home and we lived in one registered in my name, she'd belittle him. "You should buy your own house with your own money," she'd likely say. We would be the ones to live in the house, but we knew it would be a source of unnecessary comments. To avoid such drama, we decided to pretend Dwight bought the house. Learning the truth, Helen lamented. "I didn't raise my son to be so unmanly," and looked at her son with disdain. Dwight, feeling guilty, couldn't meet her eyes. If my relationship with them had been better, I might have defended him against such outdated thinking, but not this time. "So, will you all please leave the house?" I asked with a smile, causing Dwight and Helen to stiffen. "Wait, Sherry, I get why Mom and Grandma should leave, but I'm your husband and we're not divorced," he protested, unwilling to leave. If he were to be kicked out, his only options would be renting somewhere or moving back to his parents, the latter being more practical but less appealing due to the poor public transport and his lack of a car. I get it. Helen, too, seemed reluctant to leave, likely dreading the return to caregiving for her mother. "Think it over, Sherry," she suggested. "No, you're leaving," I insisted, dragging their belongings out to the yard. What do you think you're doing?" She panicked. "It doesn't make sense to keep someone else's stuff in my house. I'm decluttering." Despite their protest, I continued to move their things outside. Eventually, I even pushed Dwight out onto the lawn. Though I didn't physically force Helen or Grandma out, it ended up being quite the scuffle to get them outside. As I quietly closed the window, Dwight and Helen banged on it, demanding to be let back in. Amidst the chaos, Grandma, confused by the situation, kept yelling, "Play with me!" hitting and kicking Dwight and Helen. Unable to calm Grandma down, they took the brunt of her frustration. "Sherry, don't just watch! Help me!" Helen pleaded for my help. Dwight did the same, begging, "Please stop Grandma!" But I just smiled and watched the scene unfold without opening the window. "Ouch! Oh, come on! Don't just watch! Help me!" she screamed. Before I knew it, Grandma had mounted Helen and was hitting her on the forehead. Dwight, not wanting to get involved, just watched from a distance, trembling. "You were once a skilled businesswoman, right, Helen? If you were so great at your job, surely you can think of a way to resolve this mess," I teased. "How dare you? Or are you like me and not good at handling things well?" Helen looked at me with a look of despair and shouted, "I'm sorry." No wonder she was desperate. There were gardening tools like a shovel and a sickle nearby. Anything could happen. But if anything did, it would just be an unfortunate accident. I'm not to blame. If you're as capable as you say, I'm sure you can figure it out," I said with a smile, then closed the curtain. I thought about calling an ambulance if things got worse, but Helen ended up scolding Dwight and somehow managed to stop Grandma's rampage. They must have realized I was no longer an option for them. Afterward, they didn't ask to come back, but managed to get Grandma into a taxi and went back to their own home. Eventually, Dwight and I got divorced without any issues. Dwight, having failed to protect his mother from Grandma that day, has been at odds with her ever since. Incredibly, Helen demanded, "If you want to stay here, you take care of Grandma." The two who didn't want to take care of her ended up pushing the responsibility onto each other, and eventually, Dwight had to put Grandma in a nursing home at his own expense. She even said to him, "You cover the expense like a man." This only added fuel to their strained relationship, leading to their current estrangement. As for me, Dwight still sends messages of regret and pleas for reconciliation, wanting to live with their daughter again. But I have no intention of accepting, firmly stating, "Our relationship is only about child support now." That incident exposed his indecisiveness and tendency to be swayed by others into playing the domineering husband, something I'm no longer willing to deal with. No matter what, there's no going back. Being a divorced stay-at-home mom was tough at first, but with help from my parents, I've started working as a beautician again. As long as I have these skills, I won't struggle to make a living. I don't need him to live a strong and independent life. Besides, my daughter and I have welcomed a new family member, leaving no room for him in our home. Got a new husband, you ask? Indeed. He has triangular ears, a mustache, and meows. Isn't he adorable? Despite having me, he seemed to have an affair with the cat next door, and they're expecting kittens soon. They're not my children, but since they're his, I'll take responsibility and raise them. So my daughter and I, along with our beloved cats and their upcoming litter, will continue weaving a life full of joy and laughter. Now, I need to make some homemade treats for the cats. Let's boil some chicken.
I told my husband my body is at its limit, but he responded, "Menopause? Don't be weak." I filed divorce, and a month later, my worn-out husband came over.
Going through a menopausal phase? Don't joke around. Menopause is for women who've worked too hard after childbirth, right? It doesn't concern useless infertile women like you who didn't even bear any children.
It's frustrating, but I don't even feel like arguing. I have a terrible headache. Are we done talking? I want to go to the hospital quickly.
What's with that attitude? Do you even realize your place? It's okay to divorce someone useless like you.
My thoughts momentarily froze. What did this person just say? Divorce? Divorce, you say? I refuse to continue living in this house, breaking down physically and mentally like this. If he doesn't understand his place, he better figure it out. My name is Abigail, and I'm a 51-year-old part-time housewife. I work in the deli section at the supermarket. Standing for long hours, I suffer from back and shoulder pain every day. My husband is an office worker, and we don't have children. Lately, my main concern is that I get tired easily. Well, it's natural. I've crossed the menopausal age. I have trouble falling asleep, and my body easily gets cold. My hair and skin feel dry, and I suddenly feel like I've aged. I realize that continuing with my usual lifestyle isn't working. Even though I try to pay attention to my diet for my health and walk around the house, I don't feel much improvement. Today, when I returned from my part-time job and sat on the sofa, I couldn't get up. There are many things to do, like preparing dinner and cleaning the bathroom, but my body feels heavy. Not only can I not get up, but my upper body also feels drawn to the sofa. It's no use. Let me just lie down for a bit. I don't have the physical strength to get up, nor the mental energy to even try. Just a little bit.
Hey, Abigail, what are you doing?
I woke up to my husband's voice. I haven't been able to sleep well at night, so I ended up dozing off. Oh, welcome home.
Sleeping without preparing dinner? How privileged you are.
Was I really sleeping that much? I hurriedly got up and checked the clock. It seems like I slept for about 15 minutes. I'm sorry. Lately I've been feeling sluggish.
I don't want to hear excuses.
All right, I'll get ready right away. It felt like it was just a brief nap, but I didn't mention it. I try not to argue back because my husband persistently complains about things he doesn't like and even brings up past issues, which is bothersome, so I avoid responding.
What's for dinner today?
Fish. You're a fan of the sweet vinegar sauce, aren't you?
Huh?
My husband makes a displeased face.
Today it's meat. Just meat.
But we had meat yesterday too, and you were the one eating out.
Shut up. When I say it's meat, it's meat.
I sighed, even though I bought fresh fish with care. Well, at least I haven't cooked it yet. My husband is so stubborn about his opinions. Honestly, his selfishness is just exasperating. Maybe things would have been different if we had children. But it's pointless to dwell on that now. Dragging my heavy body, I made my way to the kitchen and start preparing dinner. Looking back, where did I go wrong? Even after several years of marriage, we still couldn't have children. When I mentioned considering infertility treatment to my husband,
Hospital? I'm not going. It's your fault, so go by yourself.
it's not certain that the problem lies with me.
So it's my fault then?
I'm not saying that. It's not about who's at fault.
Don't mess around. It's obviously your fault.
Ugh, it's pointless to argue. I mentioned that infertility treatments might be expensive now that insurance doesn't cover them like it used to.
Huh? That's a waste of money. Figure it out yourself.
Without his cooperation, I had no choice but to give up on treatment. I couldn't tolerate my husband's tone and attitude. Sometimes I'd raise my voice. Stop talking like that all the time. He would brazenly respond.
It can't be helped, I'm a Texas boy.
What kind of excuse is that? There's no special rule that only applies to Texas. His behavior isn't about being manly, it's about being self-centered. I wish he'd apologize like a kind Texan boy. Adding to the difficulty, my in-laws from Texas would call, pressuring us to have a grandchild and heir. They'd say things like, "Children are adorable," or,
"Nothing compares to having your own child."
"I want one too." So I'm making efforts like being careful with meals and timing, but my husband isn't willing to cooperate. Nevertheless, I worked hard, hoping that if we had a child, my husband's attitude would change. However, as I was left with unfinished meals and rejected when inviting him at night, I began to feel empty and desperate. I've decided to give up. This person probably won't change. There's no way a husband who does no housework will help with childcare. If I were to expect and then be betrayed, it would be shocking. And above all, it would be unfortunate for the child. Surely as my husband ages, his character will soften, and we should be able to live peacefully together as a couple. That wouldn't be so bad, would it? That's what I told myself. But what's the reality? No matter how old he gets, he never softens. Instead, he continues to sharpen his tyrannical behavior. My husband always wants to look down on me and feel superior. When I hear my part-time colleagues talk about how their husbands go for walks with them or occasionally cook for them, I feel so envious that I let out a sigh. Is it my fault for indulging in such thoughts? Is it too late already? While thinking about such things, dinner was prepared. I am mindful of preparing a healthy menu for my husband, whose belly has been getting bigger.
The portion is small. The taste is bland. Completely.
He complains like this while eating. But in the end, he finishes everything. I can't be bothered to deal with him every time. My body and head feel heavy. The next day, during break time at work, when I consulted with a colleague about my health issues, she casually said, "It must be menopause." Her name is Sarah, a colleague from the same deli section. She's older than me, but she's easy to talk to and very caring. I went through a tough time too. You did too, Sarah? I felt physically and emotionally unstable, like I wasn't myself. It was tough. Are you okay now? I'm fine. Maybe you're at the peak now, Abigail. It seems there are individual differences in menopausal symptoms. The severity of the discomfort also varies for each person. I went to the hospital and got medication, and I felt better. I hesitated about whether it was okay to go to the hospital for such a thing, but I received encouragement. I'm glad I consulted her. I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. The next day, while I was getting ready to go out, my husband asked with a suspicious look on his face.
Hey, are you going somewhere?
Yes, to the hospital.
Hospital? What about work?
I took a day off today.
What?
My husband had an unpleasant expression, but a colleague advised me not to worry about work and to go to the hospital quickly. Yesterday I couldn't sleep at all, had a headache, and looked terrible. My body is at its limit. Seems like menopause. Maybe I'll get better with medication. My husband responded.
Menopause? Don't be so spoiled.
Huh? I'm not being spoiled.
What? It is being spoiled. It's just your imagination.
My husband's voice echoed in my head and the headache worsened.
Basically, menopause happens to women who have worked too hard after childbirth, right? It doesn't concern a useless infertile woman like you who didn't even have children.
I want to tell him that he's the one who's delusional, but I don't even feel like arguing. I want to go to the hospital quickly. Can I go now?
Huh? What's with that attitude?
I'm sorry, but my head hurts, so I want to go to the hospital quickly.
You're talking out of your ass. Don't you understand your position?
But...
Are you talking back? It's okay to divorce someone useless like you.
My thoughts stopped for a moment, and I couldn't find the words to respond. What did he just say? Divorce? He mentioned divorce? Understood, I'll get a divorce.
What did you say?
So let's get a divorce. I took out the divorce papers from the drawer. I had prepared them just in case. My husband seemed somewhat surprised. Please, fill it out.
Are you really sure about this?
I will handle the submission.
Of course, I won't pay any compensation. Once we divorce, don't ever bother me again, got it?
Yes, understood.
Alright, as divorce. Disappear. I'll be free for the rest of my life.
I didn't expect kind words. I didn't even want him to worry. But being called useless of all things? What am I? Just a convenient housemaid? I refuse to live in this house, destroying my body and mind. If he doesn't understand his place, he better figure it out. After finishing the divorce papers, my husband said,
Don't you dare say you've changed your mind. Apologies are pointless.
With that, he yelled and went off to work. I packed the essentials, clothes, cosmetics, and valuables into my carry-on case and left the house. My husband of 30 years and this house can be easily discarded if I am prepared to do so. With determination, I headed to the hospital as planned and received care from the women's clinic. Thanks to my colleague's introduction, I was able to consult with a good doctor. I knew there was no miracle cure for menopausal symptoms. First, I was prescribed lifestyle improvements and herbal medicine. I felt a little relieved. Now, what should I do next? First, I need to figure out where to sleep tonight. Once I felt reassured, I realized I was hungry. I don't need to prioritize my husband and decide on a menu anymore. I don't need to do housework while watching my husband's mood when I return home. At that moment, my colleague called me on the phone. Hello? Hello, Abigail? How's the hospital I recommended? It was really good. They prescribed me some medicine too. Thank you for giving me the day off. Don't worry about it. By the way, I divorced and left home. Huh? She was surprised when she heard, but quickly understood the situation. Good job, you did great. Upon hearing that, I felt like crying. If you haven't decided where to stay yet, you can come to my house. It may be crowded with my son and his wife. She invited me. Thank you, but I'll be fine. Really? If anything happens, or even if nothing does, come anytime. I'll be waiting. Having such a kind colleague, I felt blessed. Let's just appreciate the sentiment. Actually, there's something I've wanted to do for a long time. For 30 years since marriage, I've been cooking meals for my husband who can't do any household chores at all. So something that I've never been able to do, not even once. That's dining out alone. I checked into the business hotel I had in mind. I bought a bag full of groceries at the convenience store for dinner. I indulged myself extravagantly, assembling a full-course feast with a sandwich, salad, sweets, and even beer. For me, it was an outrageous extravagance. I was able to stretch my legs and relax in the large bathroom. My husband dislikes traveling, so it was difficult for us to bathe anywhere other than at home. I was lying on my beautiful bed made by someone who wasn't me when I received a series of messages from my husband.
You'll regret it.
If you're going to apologize, do it quickly.
Someone like you can't live alone.
Upon seeing the messages, I laughed out loud. I'm sure you're happy that useless person is gone as you wished. I didn't respond and set his emails and calls to block. It feels like I've gotten back at him. I feel like I'll be able to sleep comfortably after a long time. I think the medication played a part, but I was able to sleep peacefully without being awakened by snoring. The next day, things got busy. Now that my physical and mental strength have returned, I first used the savings I have been putting away each month for retirement to rent an apartment. I make contracts in my own name and buy things I choose. It's a small apartment, but it's a place where no one complains. My heart swells with excitement for the new life. Of course, I'm continuing to work as well. I thought you were a different person, Abigail, my colleague remarked in surprise. You look younger. You seem so lively. Did you change medication? That's part of it, but I'm also living separately from my husband and feeling alive. I should have done this sooner. I was enjoying every day. It might sound heartless, but I hardly thought about my ex-husband. About a month had passed and I had started to get used to apartment living. As I was finishing work and about to head home, a disheveled man approached me. Suspicious, I realized it was my ex-husband.
Long time no see, Abigail.
You? What's wrong? The smell of alcohol and stale laundry and the overpowering odor of aging. I involuntarily stepped back.
You're still as stubborn as ever.
Huh?
I figured you'd realize my value sooner or later, so I came to fetch ya.
My ex-husband acting all high and mighty, wearing a sloppy shirt with stains on it. Unclean and repulsive. You came to fetch me? Who does he think he is? You've never done anything at home before, so now you're struggling to make ends meet, right? If that's the case, you should be kneeling down begging please come back. Even if you did, I wouldn't return. Hey, what have you been eating lately? I asked because his complexion looks terribly bad.
I work hard, you know. I need to get some nutrition, so I'm having steak, ramen, and curry.
I knew it. Even though his liver isn't in good shape and his blood pressure needs attention, it seems like he eats whatever he wants without paying attention to a balanced nutrition and his salt intake.
I'm tired of eating out and wasting money, and I don't mind eating your bland meals.
You're an adult, so manage it yourself.
Huh? What did you just say?
Oh, nothing at all.
Your poor management caused the washing machine to clog, making it unusable for laundry, and the eggs exploded in the microwave. If you don't take responsibility, it'll be a problem.
I don't understand what you're saying. It's definitely not my fault. I'm getting dizzy.
You seem to have gotten better, so you can live with me again.
No, thank you.
What?
I'm useless, right?
Huh?
For you, marriage has no value unless the spouse is useful, right? It's better for you to be with a helpful woman.
No way. Abigail, you...
I responded with a cold look. Did you think I didn't know anything? Why didn't you think about why the divorce papers were already prepared? I knew about a year ago that my husband was frequently emailing a female coworker. Under the pretext of overtime, they occasionally met and I gradually collected evidence.
I'm not the bad guy here. I was egged on to get a divorce. And then, that woman quit her job and married someone else.
My ex-husband looks at me with pleading eyes. Does he really think he'll make a comeback? I'll get my lawyer to claim damages for his infidelity.
I told you I'm not paying any damages.
Oh well, I guess I'll just claim extra from the other party.
Ooh, wait, that's...
I'm sorry you couldn't find a replacement housekeeper.
I didn't mean it that way.
Well, I think I'm done. I'm going out to eat with friends now.
Huh? What about my dinner?
My ex-husband looks at me with a puzzled expression. Honestly, he has no idea what he's saying. Since we're divorced, you should take care of yourself.
What are you saying? Let's just get married again.
Don't say such selfish things.
Shut up. Despite what I'm saying and doing, what's with your attitude?
Well, you see, I won't play second fiddle anymore. You're just a stranger to me now. Regardless of what's said, I won't be swayed. I don't need to associate with him anymore. My ex-husband tries desperately to talk me out of it.
I'm saying I'm willing to live together again, you know? Are you planning to leave me alone despite the fact that we have no children because of you?
Well, about that. I truly think it's for the best from the bottom of my heart.
Huh?
Things I don't want my children to see.
What?
A father who belittles their mother and sends flirty messages to his mistress with a smirk. Upon hearing that, my ex-husband's face turned red with anger.
Don't mess with me, infertile woman.
Looking at me with a cold gaze, I said, whether it was me or you who was the cause of infertility doesn't matter anymore. I'm glad we didn't have children together.
What?
At that moment, a boy ran up to me.
Abigail, everyone's already gathered.
Oh, really? Let's go then.
Who is this? This old man?
Well, just someone else?
Hey, you're playing around with such a young guy too.
My ex-husband says such a thing with a trembling voice, so I couldn't help but burst into laughter. What are you saying? He's just a part-time college student. I wonder if it would have been like this if I had a son. Today we're having a house party at my colleague Sarah's place. Since she invited us to come over quickly, I thought it would be nice to go with everyone from work. My husband never allowed gatherings like this, so I'm really looking forward to it. Let's go quickly.
Hey, don't leave me behind.
I glanced at my ex-husband and smiled. If you still have something to say, can you please go through the lawyer? Goodbye. Without looking back, I started walking. Rumor has it that my ex-husband caused some trouble and had to rely on the fire department. It seems he caused the fire by overcooking bread in the toaster oven. He made a big fuss blaming the expanding bread for catching fire. He's a frustrating person. He was probably not paying attention. Afterwards, the electricity was cut off because he forgot to pay the bill. He called the police demanding action, but ended up being scolded instead. Forgetting the garbage collection day multiple times, the trash piled up in front of the entrance, attracting crows. Getting frustrated, he waved a pole to chase away the crows, only to be reported to the police for being mentally unstable. He's really good at causing trouble for others, despite being unable to do anything else. He's a troublesome person. Although I've blocked his calls, apparently he's been lurking around my workplace a few times. Thankfully, my colleagues informed me so I could use a different exit to go home. I don't know how long he waited. He's persistent. After about 3 months, it seems my ex-husband, having given up on everything, decided to return to his parents' home in Texas and rely on them. It's not to take care of his elderly parents, but apparently it's for them to take care of him, a 50-year-old son unable to do anything. He's a nuisance. Well, as my in-laws once said, having children gives life value, apparently. So no matter how old you get or how foolish you become, I guess it'll be fine. I wouldn't know though, since I don't have children. Until now, I've been numb, thinking that way, but it seems I was too tied down by my husband. Living a life where I don't have to take care of my selfish husband is fulfilling. I've started attending yoga and sports classes because I have so much free time. They say it's good for the autonomic nervous system, especially during menopause. My diet seems to be going well too. If I succeed, I'll attend the alumni reunion that my husband always said no to. I'm looking forward to it. Menopausal symptoms can be tough on some days and easy on others. On days when I just can't move, I'll take a break. On days when I feel down, I'll try again tomorrow. I've come to accept that. I have to take care of my body. If you push yourself too hard, it will only come back to you. Well, let's live a healthy life, both mentally and physically, from now on.
My cold-hearted supervisor tells me to cancel the reservation that I made for the company party for 100 people.
I don't go out for garbage removal. Cancel it. Those were the words of my new boss, who had just moved in. I had desperately searched for a venue for the welcome party at her request, only for her to suddenly cancel it? Huh? What does this mean? We've already made reservations for 100 people. It's too late to cancel now. You wouldn't expect us to go to that tacky place you chose, would you? I selected a more stylish venue, a high-end Italian restaurant. I was left dumbfounded, not knowing what Wilma meant. She must have intended to embarrass me by keeping quiet until the last minute. If that's the case, I have a plan too. I understand. I'll make sure to convey that clearly. With that, she quietly hung up the phone. I had reached my limit. I couldn't let her get away with it. I'm Regine, 33 years old, and I'm single. I work as a designer at an apparel company. I've loved clothes since I was a child, and my mother always taught me how to dress well. In elementary school, I wore clothes that I made myself every day. Regine, that skirt is so cute. I made it myself. I can't believe you can make something like that. That's amazing. I thought you bought it at the store. I was happy to hear my friends say that. After graduating from high school, I enrolled in a fashion school and took the entrance exam for a company of a fashion brand I loved. The president, Patricia, is a world-famous designer. I was nervous when I met Patricia at the final interview. Everyone else came to the interview in suits, but I wore a dress I made myself. While the others were taken aback, Patricia loved it.
How interesting. I like it.
And that's how I got a job at Patricia's company. It's a large corporation with hundreds of employees worldwide. I worked hard as a designer. Being involved in designing clothes I love was more enjoyable and fulfilling than anything else, and every day was rewarding. However, one day, dark clouds suddenly appeared in my sunny sky. My supervisor was replaced, and a new supervisor from a sister company was appointed. The new boss was a woman named Wilma, 40 years old. Wilma turned out to be quite something. From her introductory speech on our first day, we were shocked. I'm starting as the new department head today. My name is Wilma. Since I'm an elite graduate of Pratt Institute, I'll ask any employee with low academic backgrounds who aren't useful to leave. So be prepared. Wilma looked down on employees with lower academic backgrounds and flaunted her own. I graduated from a vocational school, so naturally I became a target. Regine, you only have a diploma from a vocational school, so it's easy for you to make mistakes. You can't even do arithmetic. You should start over from elementary school. She would say that, and whenever she found even the slightest mistake in my documents, she'd say, Have you seen this? Overtime for subordinates was mandatory, and she would say ridiculous things about employees who were sick. You should still come to work even with a cold. That's what being a professional is about. She was a cold-hearted person who said such things with ease. What was even more troublesome was that Wilma was so into men. The gender ratio in our department is strange. There are too many women. Wilma was single, so she especially loved young men. She transferred or fired female staff who didn't please her and hired only young male staff. She was very lenient with young men. They would go out drinking together almost every day, as if they were her male harem. Although our company also sells men's clothing, the main market is, of course, women. With fewer female staff, there were often problems with work. When I complained to my accounting colleague during lunch, she said, That woman, her expense claims are ridiculously high, and there are quite a few suspicious receipts. It's become a problem. Oh, really? Tell me more about it. My colleague said she would compile information on Wilma's suspicious expense claims. Wilma had various problems, but what I couldn't forgive the most was her habit of taking credit for her subordinates' achievements. One day, when I was thinking about designing new jackets for autumn and showed them to Wilma, she said this, It's such a plain and ordinary design. This will never sell, you know. Come up with something else. But it was my pet project, so I couldn't back down. I'm sure it will be a hit. Can I at least get approval for development? Well, if you're that confident, but if it fails, you'll take responsibility, won't you? She reluctantly approved. However, it somehow became a huge hit. I've created many bestsellers since joining the company, but this one was the biggest ever. The company's performance forecast was significantly revised, and I was recognized for my achievements. Then, Wilma said something outrageous. I'll represent the department at the commendation ceremony, so you don't have to come. She attended the commendation ceremony and even received the award money herself. Well, I'm confident in myself, so this is only natural. I couldn't stand listening to her bragging. One day, at my wit's end, I went to complain to Wilma. Wilma, isn't this too much? That design was my idea, you know. What? Are you saying I took credit for it? Wilma pretended not to know. But you did say it would never sell, didn't you? Huh? Did I say something like that? She smirked as she spoke. Isn't it natural for subordinates' work to be credited to their superiors? If you don't like it, you can quit whenever you want. And that was how it ended. Since then, I've been thoroughly disliked by Wilma. I wasn't allowed to do design work, and I was only allowed to do menial tasks like creating documents. I didn't join this company to do things like this, but there was nothing I could do. As long as Wilma was around, the situation would only get worse, so I began seriously considering changing jobs. At that time, Wilma asked me to do a troublesome task. Regine, you're in charge of the welcome party for the new employees next month. Huh? Am I supposed to be in charge? There were so many new employees this year that the total number of participants exceeded 100. I've never been in charge of such a job before, and I have no idea where to find a venue that can accommodate 100 people. So naturally, I struggled with such an unfamiliar task. When she found out, Wilma was furious. Hey, the venue still hasn't been decided. You need to contact the executive soon. Wilma is the kind of person who pushes me to my limits. One day, while having lunch in the cafeteria, I ran into Patricia, the company president, after a long time.
Regine, how have you been? I haven't seen many products designed by you lately. What's going on?
She asked me, and I explained the current situation, where I'm only given menial tasks.
Well, that's troubling. You're one of our company's top designers, so doing only menial tasks won't do. I'll talk to the department head about it.
By the way, do you happen to know of any good restaurants that can accommodate about 100 people? Since we were already talking, I decided to consult her about the welcome party as well.
Oh, in that case, I know a good place. I'll introduce you.
The president recommended a nice Japanese restaurant, and we were able to book the venue successfully. However, when I informed Wilma about the restaurant, she seemed displeased.
Japanese food for a welcome party? Couldn't you find a more stylish place?
Your taste is really lacking. I thought her comment was uncalled for, especially considering the effort I put into finding that place. But I decided not to let it bother me. On the day of the welcome party, as the organizer, I arrived at the venue early and helped with the setup in the large banquet hall. However, no one showed up, even after waiting for 30 minutes past the scheduled time. So, I worriedly called Wilma. Then, she said something outrageous.
I'm not coming to the venue. Cancel it.
What do you mean? We made a reservation for 100 people. It's too late to cancel now. You didn't think I'd go to that tacky restaurant you chose, did you?
I've booked a classy Italian restaurant.
I was left dumbfounded by what Wilma was saying.
So cancel the other restaurant. We'll pay the cancellation fee.
It seemed like she had planned to embarrass me from the beginning and make me take the blame. In that case, I have my own idea. I understand. I'll make sure to convey it properly. With that, I quietly hung up the phone. I had reached my limit. I couldn't let her get away with it without showing her some consequences. A few hours later, I headed to the venue of the welcome party with the man I had brought along. When we arrived, the party was about to end. Wilma spotted me and approached with a smirk.
Oh, you're here now. It's almost time to finish. Honestly, even though you're the organizer, you're utterly useless.
Then she noticed the middle-aged man standing next to me.
Who's this old man? Today is a company party. What's the use of bringing an old man like him?
She burst into laughter while clutching her stomach. Nearby, Patricia, the company president, approached the man and started talking to him. "Oh, what's the matter, dear?" "Huh? Dear?" Wilma looked puzzled. "Let me introduce you. This is Andrew, my husband. He runs various food and beverage businesses." Mr. Hicks stares at Wilma and asks me, in a bad mood, "This is her. Is that right?" "Yes, that's right," I nodded slowly. "Why did you cancel the reservation for 100 people?" "Huh?" "It was you, wasn't it?" "Oh, well, it was me, but..." How did the president's husband know that? It turned out that the Japanese restaurant was once owned by Patricia's husband, who runs multiple restaurants. As I was having trouble choosing a venue, Patricia helped by showing me the restaurant. It was a high-end establishment listed in the Michelin Guide. With Patricia's introduction, I asked for a reservation for 100 people. So the cancellation by Wilma, apparently for the purpose of harassing me, was unreasonable. Patricia looked stunned. Mr. Hicks confronted Wilma. "I'll make sure you pay for 100 people. It was only natural because they prepared food for 100 people and it got wasted instead. "I'm very sorry." "Didn't you think about the cancellation fee? It's $8,000. "What? That much?" "Of course. It was a reservation for 100 people. All the hard work we put into preparing the food was ruined. It's a terrible inconvenience." Mr. Hicks was quite furious. "I understand. Then we'll cover the $8,000 as company expenses." Company expenses? Would that $8,000 fall under company expenses? There's no way that can be done, right, Miss Patricia? Patricia, the president, had been furrowing her brows at Wilma for a while now. "Do you often make expense claims like this?" "Well, President, surely this can be done. As the welcome party, it's part of our duties. So why not the cancellation fee?" Patricia, with a frowning expression, asked Wilma for more details, and they left the restaurant together. When they came back, Wilma seemed teary-eyed, and I struggled to contain my laughter. Later, Wilma received a severe reprimand from Patricia and Mr. Hicks for her actions. She was suspended for a while due to this incident. She was also subjected to internal investigations to see if there were any other irregularities. But I still had something to do. I requested a meeting with the president. "What's wrong? What do you want to talk about?" Patricia seemed unaware of what I was going to talk about. I showed the president some documents. They were something I had previously asked my colleague in the accounting department for. "What's this?" Looking at the documents, the president began to tremble with anger. "Call Wilma right now." Wilma arrived a few hours later. "What can I do for you?" she asked Patricia fearfully with a pale face. "What's this?" Patricia, the president, threw the documents I handed her at Wilma. As Wilma looked at the documents, her face turned pale. "These documents are evidence of the various fraudulent expense claims made by you. You're claiming expenses for drinking with a young male employee almost every day, and even claiming hotel expenses and receipts for luxury access. It's outrageous to treat the company as your personal piggy bank. Did you really think you could get away with this?" "I'm terribly sorry." Wilma apologized profusely. "I'll contact you later about your punishment, but be prepared." Patricia essentially handed down her dismissal. Wilma began to kneel and beg. "Please, anything but getting fired." "I don't want to hear any excuses. Leave now." Patricia ordered, and sobbing, Wilma clung to the president's legs. "Please, let it slide. Just spare my job, please." "You're so persistent. Enough of this." With that, Patricia kicked Wilma away. Wilma crouched on the ground, crying endlessly. It was the first time I had seen a grown person cry so much. After that, the investigation continued, revealing several more instances of fraudulent claims. The company charged all of them to Wilma, and the amount totaled in the millions.
Of course, Wilma was fired on the spot. On her last day at the company, Wilma showed up at the office, presumably to clear out her belongings. As soon as she saw me, she immediately dropped to her knees and started begging. "Can you please ask the president for me? I have mortgage loans to pay, and I can't afford to lose my job." "Of course there's no way I would do that," I coldly replied. "What? Remember this?" Wilma's face turned crimson, and she stormed out of the company. After that, Wilma struggled to find stable employment, burdened with debts. In such a small industry, negative rumors spread quickly. It must have made it difficult for her to find another job. She went from living in a high-end apartment with expensive rent to residing in a cheap old apartment. She barely managed to make ends meet by working multiple low-paying part-time jobs. As for me, my career was going well, and I was working overtime every day. On this day, too, work ran late, and I ended up leaving the office just before the last train. As I left the company building and headed towards the station, I noticed a suspicious figure lurking behind the company premises. The person seemed to be spreading some liquid around the building. "Hey, what are you doing?" I approached the person, who turned around. It was Wilma. "Huh, Wilma?" She looked scrawny and unrecognizable. There was a strong smell in the air, and I instinctively covered my nose. It smelled like gasoline. Wilma was spreading gasoline around the company building. "This is all because of you. I'm going to burn down this company," she yelled and tried to light a lighter. "What are you doing? Stop!" I grabbed Wilma's arm and struggled to take away the lighter. However, Wilma, surprisingly strong, was not easy to restrain. "Someone help!" Then security guards began to gather around. "What's going on?" "Please help. This person is trying to set fire to the company." Fortunately, they helped me restrain Wilma and take away the lighter. We called the police, and Wilma was arrested on the spot for attempted arson. I couldn't believe someone would think of setting fire to the company. If I hadn't found her, it could have been a disaster. Arson is a serious crime, so she won't be getting out of jail anytime soon. Wilma was beyond redemption, but on the other hand, she served as a good example, as a lesson. I'll continue to conduct myself with humility and integrity in my career. I want to keep working hard to maintain this happiness in the future.